though? All right, I guess I'm here to go. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to What's New in Azure Virtual Desktop. Next slide. Oh, I forgot. Something new in Azure Virtual Desktop. Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop, part of our Windows in the Cloud product. Again, leader in Gartner Magic Quadrant. We were also the leader last year and the leader before that. So 3 consecutive years. In fact, every single year that Gartner has done the desktop as a service, Microsoft has been the leader in that. Something else new, Forrester conducted a Total Economic Impact Study, TEI. The results, when you move to Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop, you save a lot of money. Also, you save a lot of productivity with your users. There's a really cool QR code in the bottom right-hand corner that you can scan to read more. These 2 things are great pieces of content to share with your leadership and your management if you haven't already moved to Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365. And they're also great pieces of content to just solidify the fact that if you are already using Windows 365 or Azure Virtual Desktop, that you made the right choice. So let's hop, some of the things that kept us in that top right corner are some of the innovation and our ability to deliver. And so I'm going to rapid fire through some of the top 10 things that we've delivered. Session host configuration. This is a new way to deploy host pools. You select this option, you get some new capabilities. One of those is ephemeral disks that Roop is going to be talking about later. The other is automated session host update, where if you have a new gold image and you want to replace that, we will now automate putting all of your hosts in a drone mode. We will switch the image by creating new hosts, and at the appropriate time, swap everything over. All automated. You don't have to do manual things. So awesome there. App attach. Not just MSIX, we also announced support for AppV and also third-party partners, Lumescent, Liquidware, and Omnissa. OneDrive support and remote app. Pretty self-explanatory. Hibernate support for personal desktops. Not pooled, personal desktops. We're always current with our images in both Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. They're updated every single month, and when new features come out, let's say 25H2, we have day 0 support. In the client multi-session images that are available for Azure Virtual Desktop in the marketplace, it includes FSLogix. So you don't have to create a custom image. Any new FSLogix agents that come out, the new versions, they're automatically included with that. So our images that we create are always current. Windows 10 ESU. If you have a Windows 10 virtual machine running in Azure, you get the ESU entitlement for free. What that means is that any of your Windows 10 workloads, you'll get that ESU automatically installed. You don't need to do anything. It's entitlement. How it works behind the scenes is that Windows Update knows that that virtual machine is running in Azure and will automatically entitle it to you. You can now assign a user multiple desktops in a personal desktop deployment. You can also provide a URL to directly launch a desktop or a personal app. Multi-monitor support for web client. This just recently got released. This is pretty awesome. And probably my most favorite one out of all of these is finally, Azure Files supports cloud-only identities. That includes FSLogix. So for the first time, you're now able to do a full cloud deployment. So you can now use onmicrosoft.com accounts to create a deployment. We do not have a blog for this on the AVD portal. It's on the Windows IT Pro, and there's also one on Azure Storage about that. So if you want to look for more information on that. So that behind us, let's get to some of the fun things. Scott, our VP, and also a blog that we recently published, announced a new capability expanding on our AVD hybrid story. And so, as you know, we've had the capability to deploy AVD on Azure Local. Used to be called Azure Stack HCI. We rebranded it, of course, like a lot of things in Microsoft, and it's now called Azure Local. Customers love this. But the challenge that they have is they have to purchase new hardware. They have to purchase that hardware, they have to then rack it, they have to operationalize it, and it's great. But they kept hearing that that is a long delay. They wanted something more flexible. And so what we now have is the capability of what we call Azure Virtual Desktop for hybrid deployments. What that really means under the covers is it's AVD on Azure Arc for Server. That will provide the capability and flexibility that you need. So what does that look like? It's the most common question I got. So I've been working the booth a lot. In fact, I'll be at the booth. Ooh, there's a lot of cameras that just went up. I'll be working the booth after this from 11:30 until like they start serving alcohol, like at 5 p.m. So feel free to stop by. But like the most common question that I got from everyone is, I read the blog, I heard Scott, how does it work? It's totally simple. There's really like 3 steps. You create the virtual machine. You create a host pool. And then simply install the Arc agent, and then add the AVD extension, and pick a host pool. And that's it. You bring the hypervisor, whether it's VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix. You just create the VM, Arc enable it, add the AVD extension. That simple. And so that provides a lot of flexibility, because we know that you've spent the last 20 years working on-prem, and making a jump to the cloud is challenging. You got to move a lot of stuff. And this solution provides an incremental step for you to start working towards that cloud-only environment. You get the maximum value out of running AVD and Windows 365 in the cloud. But this is a good step as you begin on that particular journey. I'm also excited to announce that we have 4 partners launching with this: ControlUp, LoginVSI, Nerdio, and Nutanix. If you want to learn more about their integrations with this AVD hybrid environments, go to their booths and check them out. I'll also be at the booth, like I said, again, if you want to come to the AVD. It's on Theater 4 on the backside by the restrooms. And so I'll be back there if you have any further questions on that. Something else big is B2B. We announced the general availability of B2B. Now, how this really works, this isn't like B2B kind of like where you create a shadow user. No, this is true B2B. And how I kind of like to describe this is that, imagine I'm Contoso. I can invite somebody from 𝗲𝗲 into my tenant. You're a guest user in Entra, but this is the cool part. You can assign that user to an AVD host pool where their VMs are Entra joined. And that 𝗲𝗲 identity can log in to that Contoso AVD host using their credentials. This is the #1 feature ask that we got from our internal teams for like multiple years. This took over 3 years of development. There had to be changes in the Windows operating system. There had to be changes in Entra. And then within our team, we had to be the glue that put all of that together. And so this is tremendous to get these 2 features out the door. There's a lot of security features on there. The easy way I like to distill that down is your users in 𝗲𝗲, they have their own security. But when they come into your tenant, you can apply your conditional access policies to those users. So if they're not using MFA in 𝗲𝗲, you can force them to do MFA in Contoso. When you couple B2B with the per user access pricing, it completes the circle for external users. So we've had this capability. If you're not familiar with per user access pricing, our entitlement for AVD is Windows Enterprise E3. But for external users, we had per user access pricing. So basically, you can do that charge for that external connector. When you couple that with B2B, not only can you be in licensing compliance, but those users can actually bring their own identity. And lastly, yes, it works with FSLogix. Customers are already getting the value out of this. And so I'd like to invite Mark up from SLB to talk more about how their organization is getting value out of this today.
Thank you. Good morning. So at SLB, we're very focused on making sure that the entire user journey is very seamless. And we've been working with Microsoft on Azure, deploying companies on Azure over the last few years, and working very closely with Microsoft on their B2B components that they're putting into Azure Virtual Desktop. So I want to talk a little bit more about our users and why our users are a little bit special. So we work in oilfield services, and on the left-hand side of the slide, you can see that our users are working with global scale data. In this case, this is the Gulf of America. and you can see the data set sizes that our geologists, geophysicists, and reservoir engineers use to look at their data. These users are interacting with that data graphically very, very fast. So they need a very, very fast graphical user interface. And they use a technology from us called 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀 that's a connected version of our desktop software that's deployed in Azure. And they use that to build these types of models that you see on the right-hand side. And on the right-hand side, what you see is the geology that's underneath your feet today. Our users are interpreting these yellow lines that are faults in the geology. And it's a very interactive process, so it needs to run at about 60 frames per second. So we've been working with Microsoft to make sure that our users can not only interact with Azure Virtual Desktop at that rate, but they can also take advantage of all the B2B components that have been built by Microsoft. And I'm going to take you through some of those just now. So there are obviously a number of problems or issues that we've had or opportunities, and Microsoft has been working on with us. Infrastructure limitations for small to medium businesses, identity and device management that was just pointed out as one of the things Microsoft has been working on for a while. And I'm going to show you a demo of that in our environment so that you understand it's there today. And in our case, graphical intensive applications. So our users use two 40-inch monitors on their desktops to interact with real data, not gaming data, not stuff that's been reduced in scale, but real data that's streaming into the environment. And they're interacting with that incredibly fast. And we need that scalability and adaptability. And of course, working with the Microsoft team, we're assured of security. And you've just heard about some of the great innovation that's happening there and cost optimization. So we're deploying Azure Virtual Desktop, and that central management is there, that solution has come in, and all those B2B components where our customers can now use their own identity to log in to us, to use our technology, and that's now deployable, as you heard earlier. So what I'm going to do now is take you through a short demo. And in this demo, what you can see is that the Microsoft tools are available, and the customer is going to go and log into this environment. And they're going to use their own identity to log into us. And basically, they begin that sign-in process. Super secure. They're using their identity. They're also going to be using multi-factor authentication, which we require on all of our systems. So they're going to log into SLB. They're going to use that password and multi-factor authentication, which is supplied very seamlessly for them now. The user's then going to pick up their Azure Virtual Desktop that's assigned to them as described previously. And once they've done that with their external identity, they're going to come in and pick up one of our projects with the assigned AVD. So they've come into that assigned AVD. They're going to come in and open up our cloud technology called 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀. They're going to launch 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, which is our geological subsurface modeling software that you saw. And they're going to launch this project. Now, this project has some missing data, but this AVD seamlessly integrates with everything that's there in terms of their storage. And they can come up and pick up more seismic data, this very high intensity data. And they're now going to interact with that in 3 dimensions to build geological models so that they can plan to exploit the subsurface for oil and gas and other components. And you're going to see that working very, very fast for them there. So that's essentially a demonstration. What they're doing now is they're going to take those components, if they've got to produce a report for their management, they're going to pull those out with instant access to the Microsoft 365 tools to enhance their work every day. And that's a demo of what you've just heard about working in real life. And we've been working with Microsoft very successfully on that over the last few months. So I'd like to thank you for that, and I'm going to hand you over to Roop, who's going to give you more details.
Hello, everyone. My name is Roop. I'm the lead for platform for Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. Today, I'm going to talk about start with a topic which I'm really, really passionate about, which is resiliency. So when you create a host pool today in Azure Virtual Desktop, one of the first things which we ask you is, hey, what is the location in which you want to place this host pool in? right? Based on the choice what you make, we select the geography in which we will put your metadata in. Now, that works well for data sovereignty. It is great. I mean, you can see the list of regions in green. Those are all the places where we have our geographical database in today and provides great data sovereignty. Now, let's take a case if the region which is hosting that particular database goes down. What happens then? Now, that could have ripple effects on the other regions in that particular geography. So that's something which we want to fix, and that's where regional host pools kind of come in. So what we are doing now, we are taking that particular database and putting them in every region, every supported region in Azure geography for Azure Virtual Desktop. What does that mean? It means that you no more have cross-region dependencies for any of your connectivity infrastructure. So the picture on the right, if you look at now the blue marks, those are all the new regional databases where you're going to see them. Now, the key thing, what you need to kind of understand is now, if any of these regions now kind of goes down, the failure is only isolated to that particular region and does not ripple across other regions in that particular geography. This feature, how do you enable it? It's very simple. So if you go to Azure Virtual Desktop, and if you're trying to create a new host pool, all you need to say is like, hey, my deployment scope needs to be regional. And we will take your metadata and put that in the regional database kind of going forward. For Windows 365, which uses the same connectivity infrastructure, Microsoft is going to take care of it on your behalf. Now moving on to management. So let's talk about what's new and what's next in kind of the management. At the Ignite last year, we spoke about some of the challenges admins face today with Azure Virtual Desktop deployment and management, and how we are trying to make it more efficient with the capabilities like session host configuration, host pool update, as well as auto scaling. Now, we are building on that particular foundation to get a new set of capabilities to support ephemeral OS disks. So what are these ephemeral OS disks, and why are these important? So if you take any Azure VM today, by default, it uses the disk from a remote storage. Now, that is different for ephemeral OS disk VMs. Instead of using the disk from the remote storage, we will be using the disk from the local Hyper-V server. What does that give us? Because you are using a local Hyper-V server, high number of ops, so you would be faster ops, so you would be able to do efficient deployment, faster boot up, and faster startup. And especially, this is useful for scenarios where you want to kind of refresh your desktops in a frequent manner. Security-sensitive organizations are mostly using them. The organizations which they want to do kind of labs, where they want to kind of turn on and turn off their devices or refresh their devices often, this is a perfect solution for them. So now I invite Senika onto the stage to talk about how to set up ephemeral disks and how to manage them. Senika coincidentally wrote the spec for ephemeral disks, so I'm really, really excited to bring her on stage to do the demo as well.
Awesome. So I'm going to get started by talking through how to set up an ephemeral OS disk VM in the context of AVD. So first, you start by creating a host pool. Everything about this process is pretty much the same. The only thing to call out here that's different for ephemeral OS disks is that we only support them for pooled host pools. So you have to make sure that you select pooled, and then host pools that have that session host configuration that Eric and Roop were talking about earlier. This is a sub-resource of the host pool that persists all configuration information relevant to creating that session host, like the resource group, name prefix, location, security type. All of that information is stored. One thing to call out for ephemeral OS disk VMs in AVD, it supports all types of images, marketplace images, custom images, and also images from Azure Compute Gallery. Another thing to call out is around the VM size. So you need to choose a VM size that is large enough to store the temp disk or the cache. And so this is one of the examples where we have the D16ASV4, which is large enough to store the temp disk in this case. The way you choose between OS cache placement or temp disk placement just depends on the VM size that you're using. Some of the older VM series come with a cache disk. Some of the newer ones come with a temp disk. So that's how you decide which one you want to go about using. You fill in the rest of the information for creating that VM, kick off the deployment. What you'll get is a host pool, a session host configuration, and an ephemeral OS enabled session host. And the way to verify that is you can go to the session host in that host pool, and you'll see under the disk details the ephemeral OS disk with the temp disk placement. So that's just a quick demo of how to create it. Now the next thing, the next thing to talk through is management. So due to the ephemeral nature of ephemeral OS disk VMs, they cannot be rebooted. They can't be started, or stopped, hibernated, or resumed. And so to manage host pools that have these ephemeral SDIS VMs, we recommend using dynamic autoscale. Yeah, I'll go to the next. There we go. So to configure dynamic autoscale, you just need to go ahead and create a scaling plan. Is it going?
Yep.
I don't think it's going right now.
Okay.
I'm going to start the demo here. You just need to go ahead and create a scaling plan. And one of the main things to call out with this particular type of autoscale, dynamic autoscale, for ephemeral SDIS VMs is that the minimum percentage of active hosts, you just need to set that to 100% in each phase of the schedule. And by doing that, you're telling the scaling service, hey, don't turn these VMs on and off. You need to make sure to create and delete them based on the capacity threshold and schedule that you've defined. Go ahead and assign that scaling plan to the host pool that we just created, and that's it. Dynamic autoscale will take care of managing all of those ephemeral SDIS VMs when they need to be refreshed.
Awesome. Thank you, Seneca. OK, one of the secrets we haven't told you is when you use storage for ephemeral disk, the storage is zero cost. You do not pay for any storage. You only pay for compute. So that's another advantage when you use ephemeral disk VMs. Cool. That's not where, so we are not stopping there. We are making further enhancements in our session host management. So I'll talk through the few ones which are really interesting and customers have talked about to us in the past. So today, when customer starts a host pool configuration or a host pool deployment, and if they discover 5 minutes into the deployment that, hey, I should have chosen this VM, or I should have chosen that particular region, today, the experience is they would need to wait for the deployment to complete to go back and be able to kind of correct that. That is now changing with session host configuration, where we will allow you to pause the deployment, edit the deployment, make the changes you want to make, and then go ahead and resume that particular deployment. So you are saving time there in terms of being able to get started with your deployment. Number two, this is one of the most asked features, is like, hey, we want capability to set the drain mode so that the VMs have just enough time to be able to finish off their last app configurations and settings and stuff. Now we are giving capability for customers to start the session host in drain mode so administrator can decide when the users can connect. And this is currently not in the public preview, but it is going to come soon. Then the last one is the new canary checks, which we're introducing for Azure Virtual Desktop deployment. This allows you to validate the configuration before, again, the full provisioning to enable you to do efficient deployments. Cool. Next, let's move on to the next topic, user experience. So user experience is the heart of the roadmap. We have been delivering new features to this particular capability. So I want to kind of take you through this particular journey from when we actually started Azure Virtual Desktops. When we started Azure Virtual Desktop, we started with like TCP. And one of the key metrics when we look at user experience is, I should say, two key metrics. What we look at is, are the users, what is our getting connected, and what is our staying connected metric? And we monitor that very seriously in the team and look at ways on how we could kind of improve that. So when we started with Azure Virtual Desktop, we started with TCP, and our mean time to failure, failure in this case is a disconnect, which is kind of going back to staying connected kind of metric, was 4 hours. So we definitely wanted to kind of improve it, because if you take a regular workday of 8 hours, if you're using TCP in the way when we started Azure Virtual Desktop, probably you were experiencing 2 disconnects in a single day. That's not an experience which we wanted to kind of deliver. So we started making investments there and started investing on something called as UDP. For UDP journey, we started with managed RDP short path. So this was 2020, pre-COVID. We wanted to optimize it for enterprises who have express route setup. So that's where we started with the managed short path, giving UDP access to customers who are connecting to their environment via the express routes. Then COVID struck, everybody went to home and started to work from the home. So then we took a step further, and then we wanted to make UDP available for public networks, and that's where direct RDP short path came. Also, we call it as RDP short path for public networks. But one thing what we realized is, even though people were connecting from home, they are still going through the complex network configurations which are there in the enterprise. So we needed to provide a way to unblock them, and that's where we started our journey with the relayed RDP short path. That came in 2024. We have been expanding on that particular investment. Now we have turn relay servers in 40 Azure regions, which give you the best latency experience and best connectivity experience, irrespective of where you're connecting from, irrespective of where your VMs are located in. And that's not the end. we have worked very closely with Zscaler and some of our partners to be able to make the configuration easier for customers so that it's easy for you to get to that particular resiliency where you want to be in. The other thing, the most important thing, which we have announced recently, and I would call this a major breakthrough, is Multipath. So Multipath is this capability where it provides connection, alternate paths to be able to reach the particular VM. So imagine that I'm connecting it, the user is connecting, one path has suddenly kind of gone bad. Now Multipath gives me the capability to switch or fail over to another path which is successful. And we do that dynamically across the connection from the user to the VM. So you would be able to observe less number of disconnects. So if you look at kind of the chart there, right, the mean time to failure, which I said started with like 4 hours, we are slowly getting to 8 hours now, which is a regular working day. So as we make these investments, our goal is for you not to have a single disconnect in a working day. So I again invite Seneca to give a quick demo of Multipath.
Oh, I got to change this thing.
Yeah.
OK, we're on the right screen. So as Roop mentioned, Multipath is one of the most innovative features that we have within AVD because it is a feature designed to significantly reduce recovery time during network disconnects. One of the most compelling aspects of the RDP Multipath feature is that it's available for everybody, that it doesn't require any additional effort or changes from the IT admin to get set up. Multipath, the way it works is by evaluating multiple network paths, and if there is a single point of failure, failing over to another path so that there is no experience disconnect or interruption for the end user. So if we take a look at these two screens, on the left we have a scenario where RDP Multipath has not been enabled. You can see that we go to disable the Ethernet connection, and eventually the end user will see a dialog that comes up, a reconnect screen, that in this case takes on average around 53 seconds to resolve. So the end user's session is interrupted. As you can see here, the reconnect dialog comes up. The end user can't do anything. Their productivity has been interrupted. They can't resume their work. And it takes a while for them to get back into their session. They don't know what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. Now on the right, we have a scenario where RDP Multipath has been enabled. So if we go and do the same exercise and disable the Ethernet network connection, you'll see that there's no perceived difference in the end user experience. In the back end, it takes a matter of milliseconds to restore to a new network path so that connectivity can continue. But from the end user perspective, their session is still continuing, and they don't notice any downtime. So RDP Multipath is one of these distinct, exciting features that we have within AVD because it is about restoring connectivity and remaining productive for the end user.
Cool.
Yep.
The best part about Multipath, there is zero configuration. You need not do anything on your VMs, on your network. It comes automatically. So that's the experience where we want to go. Oh, I switch. OK. Can you see the move? Oh, OK, perfect. OK, and that's not where we are stopping with experiences. So we thought, why should local apps only have the fun, right? We should have the same fun for remote apps as well. And now we are bringing Snap support for remote apps. We have overhauled our overall kind of remote app infrastructure to make sure the remote apps can behave just like local apps. So we have better Snap support now. We have hotkey support. We have DPI support. And remote apps would just look like local apps for you. And that's something which we are investing. This feature is coming to public preview. You can read more details about it in the blog located there. OK, switching gears. How many of you have seen this slide before, or a version of this slide before? OK, I see some hands here. Cool. The reason why we built this particular slide is for customers to be able to determine what is the right solution which fits for their particular use case or their scenario. But one thing when we realized while we are talking to the customers is like, hey, I am choosing one solution or the other solution because I have this feature here and I have this delivery method here. And that is not allowing them to choose a solution which is optimal fit for them. So we have taken that feedback seriously, and now we are aligning the innovation strategies across both of our products. What does that mean? Now, be it a desktop, be it an app, be it a persistent desktop, be it a non-persistent desktop, now all of those are covered by both the solutions what we offer. One in a SaaS model, and other one is a PaaS model. The SaaS model is designed to provide simplicity, predictable pricing, and easier to kind of manage. And the PaaS model gives you the maximum amount of flexibility and control, now also allows you to deploy to hybrid, and gives you consumption-based kind of pricing. Now, you need not choose one solution on the other based on the features, but more around where does your expertise lie? What are your ambitions? What is your goal? What are your requirements? Based on that, you could choose what fits you the best. And our responsibility is to make sure we provide you the right set of tools, irrespective of which solution you are using. Now, speaking about tools, one of the common asks which we hear from the customers is about monitoring and reporting, and how can we improve reporting across our products. So you know about AVD insights in Azure Virtual Desktop. We are bringing similar insights for Windows 365, and I'll invite Eric back on the stage to talk about reporting we are doing to Windows 365, and also wrap up this particular session. Eric, over to you.
Reporting and monitoring at a very high level. And so what we've provided and coming new to Windows 365 is a whole new reporting experience that will meet that VDI admin's expectations. We're currently in private preview. This will go public preview early next calendar year. Whether it's a pie chart, a line chart, a bar chart, a table, that rich data in multiple different ways presented to you will be available. You'll also be able to export that. Every chart, every table, exported to CSV or to file, everything available through Graph to pull into BI. But this is what has been missing out of Windows 365 and what we've heard from you in terms of the type of reporting experience and monitoring that you expect. Something else, if you're also ready to make the leap, we have provided a migration API that will migrate your personal desktops that you're using today in VDI from your current solution into Windows 365. This is led by a Partner Solutions, and so take a look at them. We don't have the, we have a link for that. But Partner Solutions to be able to provide that migration path in order to jump right to Windows 365. Wow, we've presented a lot, from connectivity to reporting to new ways of deploying Azure Virtual Desktop on on-premise environments. There's a lot to take in. We'll be at the booth. I'll be there at 11:30 until, like I said, the end of the day. There will be other members from the product group available there. We'll be available here at the end to answer questions. But I want to say thank you from myself to Roop, to Seneca, to Mark, and to all those others that made all of this magic possible. The developers, the product managers that are back continuing to work and innovate on this. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your time at Ignite.